Hi, everybody. Oh, are you recording?
Yeah.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Janet Hughes. I am a Programme Director in the Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and I'm the Programme Director for the Future Farming and Countryside Programme. And what that means is that I am the senior official who is responsible for delivering the agricultural transition. And I work alongside with another director who has some particular delivery accountabilities for environmental land management schemes. And the agricultural transition is everything that we're doing to move away from the common agricultural policy to a new set of arrangements to support and regulate farming in the countryside in England. And I'm going to talk for less than 10 minutes. So there's loads of time for you to ask questions, and then I can just be guided by what you're interested in. But I thought I'd give you a bit of an overview of what the things are that are included in that transition, because that's probably going to spark some questions, I would have thought. So the things we're doing are, having left the European Union, we've got two broad objectives for the farming sector and the countryside over the next decade. One of them is we want the sector to be really competitive and resilient and for businesses to thrive in the agriculture sector. And the other is we want to get much better environmental and climate change and animal welfares from the sector. And we know there's lots of farmers who do lots of really brilliant things on all of those three sets of outcomes. And what we want to do is to have more farmers doing those brilliant things. And so what we're going to do to achieve that is we currently spend £2.4 billion a year, a lot of money, on farming. And 1.8 billion of that goes on subsidies to farmers, as I'm sure you know, where they're paid for having a certain amount of land. And what we're going to do is stop doing that. And the reason we're going to stop doing it is because we think it's not very good value for money. And it has impacts on the economy of the sector and the way that it operates, which are not helpful. It stifles productivity growth, it inflates rents, and it doesn't get us any great outcomes for the taxpayer either from an environmental perspective. So what we want to do is phase those out. Now, we're not going to do that immediately, because if we did, there would be some businesses in particular that are really quite reliant on those subsidies for their profits. So we want to give people a chance to plan and adapt their businesses so that they can be profitable without subsidies. So we're going to phase those subsidies out over 7 years. And by the end of that 7 years, we'll be spending that 2.4 billion entirely on those two outcomes that I mentioned at the beginning. Better, more productive sector and more efficient and more profitable on the one hand, and also at the same time, more environmentally friendly, better for the climate, better for animal welfare. And we think for those two outcomes, we think you can't have one without the other. So you can't have environmental and climate and animal welfare outcomes unless you've got profitable businesses in the agriculture sector. But you also can't have a profitable agriculture sector unless you look after the environment over time. Because over time, otherwise, the soils would be depleted and climate change will happen and nature will be depleted such that it becomes more and more difficult to farm profitably. So those two things go hand in hand. It's not a choice between one or the other. And the way we're going to achieve that, we're going to spend that 2.4 billion differently. And we're going to spend it on schemes to support farmers to do good things for the environment, for climate change, for animal welfare, for biodiversity, for flood mitigation, and also for heritage and the natural environment. And we currently do that through the countryside stewardship and environmental stewardship schemes, which you've probably heard of. We spend about 600 million through those schemes now. And there are lots of people in them, there's about 30,000 farmers in them, but they don't have a fantastic reputation. Partly because of the way we have to administer them, and also because they're not seen as accessible to the great majority of farmers, and that's why there's only 30% in them. So we are improving those schemes now that we've left the EU to simplify them, to improve the way we deal with compliance. So if you said you're going to do a thing, what do we do if you haven't done that thing? Previously, what we did was issue with a fine, and that was the only thing we could do. Now what we do is that we've got a broader range of discretion that we can apply. If we find something that's not quite as it should be, we might give you some advice, send you a letter, give you a warning, give you a chance to make it better before we think about enforcement action. So we're improving countryside stewardship and environmental stewardship. But by about 2024, we'll be ready to replace that completely with a new set of environmental land management schemes. And you may have heard of these. There are three. And the first one is the Sustainable Farming Incentive. And that scheme is for all farmers and all farms and all farm types and tenants and landlords and all different types of farmers and different types of land, just farmers actually. I was going to say land managers, but it's not. This one's just for farmers, Sustainable Farming Incentive. And the idea is that you look after your soil better, you look after your hedges better for the environment, or you look after your waterways better for the environment. And for that, we pay you. And so the idea is that you think of your productivity on your farm, not just as food productivity, which is of course very important, and that's what farms are for, but also environmental productivity. So you're producing wildlife and carbon sequestration and flood risk mitigation. and those outcomes aren't paid for in the market, so we want to pay for them through the government instead. So that's the first scheme. The second scheme is the Local Nature Recovery Scheme, and that one is for actions which are specific to a particular area. So for example, we don't want to plant trees in peat bogs, we want to restore the peat bogs instead. So we want to have actions which are relevant to the local area. So the sustainable farming incentive is actions that can be taken anywhere by anyone and they'll be useful, like having more hedgerows and looking after them in particular ways for the environment. Local nature recovery is more, for example, if you're in a catchment area, looking after that catchment sensitively so you don't have nitrate and phosphate running off into the watercourses, or other local priorities that you could set. And also through the Local Nature Recovery Scheme, we want to support collaboration between farmers, and the cluster groups that you might have come across are already doing this, and we're trying to learn from them and learn from the facilitation fund participants, where people collaborate together in a local area to achieve outcomes. So that's the second one. And the third one is the Landscape Recovery Scheme. And this one is about much larger scale change, whether it's rewilding, restoration of a particular habitat like a peatland or wetland restoration project, or woodland creation. And we'd expect that to happen on less productive ground and areas where those sorts of changes are more appropriate. So 3 schemes, they'll all be fully ready by 2024, but we're beginning to pilot them and roll them out from now. And we've got 2,173, I think, farmers who who've expressed an interest in taking part in the Sustainable Farming Incentive pilot, which we're excited to get on with shortly. So you can ask me questions about that if you like. But that's the thing that gets talked about the most, but we're actually doing some other things too. One of the other things we're doing is looking at regulation and enforcement, because the way that works is broadly seen by farmers and inspectors actually, and environmentalists, as not very effective, because what we do is we punish minor breaches which don't cause any material harm, and we fail to enforce major breaches which really do cause really bad harm. So purposefully emptying your slurry into the river and killing everything in it, for example, very bad thing to do. We're not currently set up properly to enforce that sort of damage. So we're looking at how to do regulation and enforcement much better in future. When we phase out cross-compliance, if you're not familiar with that, then I can explain it to you, but I think you probably will be. When we phase out the link between the environmental rules and the way we enforce them now and the direct payments, when that goes in 2024. But we are making improvements now, actually, to the way we do those inspections. And we're also going to be investing alongside that in slurry management, because there's a particular market failure where a huge proportion of farms don't have slurry storage that is compliant with the regulations, and it's dangerous for the environment. And so we're going to support farmers to invest in their slurry management practices and technology and kit so that they can go beyond the regulatory requirements. And we'll do that in the early years of the transition, and then later, once we've supported that investment, then we would enforce the rules much more fully, having given everyone a chance to catch up. So we've got the environmental land management schemes, we've got regulation and enforcement and slurry management investment to support that. And then the last category of things that we're investing in is productivity. And we're doing quite a range of things here. And by the way, when I say productivity, I don't necessarily mean increased production on a particular farm. I mean a bigger difference between your costs and your income, so you're more profitable and you're producing in a more efficient way. That means you can be profitable without subsidies, and you can produce high quality food and also help the environment, climate change, animal welfare, etc. And there's a few different things we're doing here. We're supporting the setup of an Institute for Agriculture and Horticulture, so that when you've finished here, you can carry on professionally developing throughout your career, and you can earn recognition for doing that. And there can be recognized standards for learning and development throughout your farming career, not just at the beginning of it when you go to college. We're also looking to support innovation, research and development in the sector, both carrying out the research and development, but then also helping people to adopt the findings of that, because we find that the least profitable farms in particular are quite slow to adopt innovative practices, and we want to help farmers to do that because it can make them both more efficient and better for the environment and climate as well. We're supporting investment in technology and kits to help farms become more efficient. So just routine, either small scale bits of kit or larger scale infrastructure type improvements. And you might be interested, particularly in this one, we're also looking to support a new entrant scheme, because we know it's really difficult for new entrants unless you inherit. And even then it's quite difficult because you might not be able to actually take over for quite a long time. But unless you inherit or somehow have access, it's really hard as a new entrant, we know. So we're looking at re-establishing more county farms and council farms to give people a route into the sector, looking at maybe capital grants, maybe equipment, maybe learning support to help new entrants. And we're actually co-designing that now with farmers to work out what is it that makes it difficult and what can we do about it. So that's all the things we're doing. We're doing phasing out direct payments. We're improving existing schemes. We're introducing new environmental land management schemes. We're going to improve regulation and enforcement and slurry management alongside that. And we're going to improve productivity through a range of different types of support. And we're going to do this all over 7 years. And the way we're doing it is quite different for government, because you may be aware that we've tried some reforms in this area in the past and they haven't gone spectacularly well. And there's been lots of coverage of failures of the past, 2 particular examples in the last 20 years, but I'm sure there are more. And there are plenty across the rest of government too. And so learning from that, we've learned that we want to do 2 particular things this time around. One is co-design what we're doing with farmers. So I spend quite a lot of time talking to farmers online, on Twitter, and I should put my Twitter handle here actually. If you're into social media, you can follow me on the Twitters, and we can and I do engage on there and answer questions and stuff. So you're more than welcome to follow me and say hi. That'll be nice. But also on webinars like this, and when I'm allowed out and about on farms, and my team do the same. And we spend lots of time talking to farmers about what actually works in real life, so we can make sure what we're doing isn't just some policy nonsense that we've dreamt up in London by people like me who aren't farmers, but instead it's actually going to work. And secondly, we're taking a test and learn approach. So we build something, we try it a bit like a farmer would, try something out, see if it works. If so, scale it. If not, don't do that again, do something else instead. And we're trying to take that approach with this program. So rather than saying at the beginning, here is everything we're going to do, and this is exactly what it's going to look like, and now we're just going to deliver it. Instead, we deliver something quite small, see how it goes, see what we need to learn, iterate it, improve it, make it better, deliver something more, learn some more, repeat. And we'll do that throughout the 7 years. And I am planning on being here for the whole 7 years. I joined the program last June. I don't come from a farming background. My speciality is making things happen in government, and I'm making them work for users. And I've done that in education, in health, in the Foreign Office, and various other places. And now here I am in Defra, my best job ever, which I've got to say, I think is the best job in the country. So if you don't fancy going into farming, come and be a civil servant working on our program, because it's ace fun. And you get to make a big impact and do really good things and make things better. So I'm going to just stop there, because that's a kind of overview. I put some links in the chat. The first one is a link to the Agricultural Transition Plan, which is the document that we tried to write this not in policy wonk speak, but instead in actual English. So hopefully it's quite a readable policy document, relatively speaking, to the normal style of government. And that's the plan we published in November last year to say all the things I've just said, what we're doing and how we're going to do it. And the second one is an evidence compendium that if you haven't seen it, it's really good. It's really, I refer to it all the time, because it's everything we knew in 2019 about farming and what sort of businesses are likely to be profitable, what sort of practices do they follow, what's the difference between the most and the least profitable in the different sectors, and what are the things that those least profitable ones could do to catch up. It's really interesting. And then the last one is our blog, where you can listen to me getting excited talking to farmers on my podcast. And I've done 3 so far. The last one, if you've heard of Gabe Brown, he wrote Dirt to Soil, which is a really good book. It's my favorite one so far, apart from James Rebanks's book about farming. And it's all about how he implemented regenerative practices on his farm. And so he's the most recent podcast, but we also publish updates on the blog about what we're doing in the program. So if you're interested to follow what we're doing, which you should be, because we're going to change the whole way farming works in the country, and you're studying farming. So if you're not, then what the hell are you doing? Then sign up to the blog, and you can get updates from there. And if you've ever got a question and you feel shy asking it now, or you don't get a chance, you're always more than welcome to ask me a question on Twitter, and I do try and reply to all the questions I get. And I think I do reply to all of them. I might occasionally miss one by accident, but I generally speaking do. So you're more than welcome to ask me anytime. So there you go. Questions.
Perfect. So what I think the best way to do, I know Joe is itching for some questions because he was telling me in advance. So if we, Joe, if you want to kick off some of your questions, and then those viewing, if you're happy for me to sort of give you access to talk and things, can you just give me a little indication with with the raise hand function, and I can sort of give you the allow to talk function. I understand, some people don't feel comfortable, and obviously I just want to remind you we are recording this as well. So, feel free to put them in the Q&A. So if you want me to...
Don't be shy. Come and have a chat.
And put your hand up, and then if you want to put questions in the chat as well. But I know Joe's itching, and I've thought of a couple just from what you've been saying there as well. So Joe,
go on, fire away. Let's see.
Definitely, no, it's very exciting, as sad as that sounds to some people. I think what you're doing is absolutely brilliant. But I want to start on, you mentioned the number 2,173 farmers have applied for the Elms, and what is that? Were you happy with that? Was that full sort of, or what's the likelihood of all those farmers being accepted onto the Elms scheme?
So this is just for the pilot. So what we said was, come and help us. Yeah, so for everybody else listening, what we said was, we're designing this new scheme called the Sustainable Farming Incentive. We've got a reasonable idea now how it should work, because we've done lots of tests and trials and lots of work with farmers, etc. And now we're going to try it out in real life. Come and help us learn. So this was to appeal to a particular early adopter kind of farmer, really, because not everybody's going to want to do that sort of experimental thing. We were hoping to get 1,000 people saying that they were interested, so we were really pleased to get 2,000. And in particular, we were really pleased because we wanted to get a split of people from different regions and different types of farm and different sizes of farm, and tenants and owners, and we did. We got a decent spread of all of those. We do expect some of them to drop out, because it was dead easy to register your interest, so it's possible that some of those people just did it because it took 5 minutes and they didn't really intend to take part at all. Or actually, when it comes to it, they've decided to do something else instead. So we don't expect all of those people to actually go into the pilot. So we're going to invite all of them. They did an expression of interest, which was very straightforward, took about, like I say, less than 5 minutes. Now we're going to invite them to actually apply to come in. So we hope that we'll get about half of those actually will end up being in the pilot, or something in that region. We don't need loads. We need enough people to give us a decent representative sample. Not a statistically representative sample necessarily, but a decent range of people who can help us learn and design the scheme. So yeah, we were pretty pleased with that. We'll launch the core elements of that scheme for everyone from next year. So that's when we should see a lot more people wanting to take part in real life for real.
So all those farmers that applied will be on the pilot. Is that what you're saying?
They'll all be invited to now join the pilot fully. So they express their interest, and now we're going to contact each of them next week to say, yes, please do apply. Here's how to do it. And then they'll start their agreements in October is the plan.
Perfect. Okay, now I think a lot of people are excited to hear about that. Thomas, I'll shut up.
No, I just sort of had a question around. So when I was on my placement year, so a bit of background, I'm going off to be a training chartered surveyor, and I spent a lot of my time doing the mid-tier stewardship grants, and a lot of questions I got was, what's the least I can do to get paid to concrete my yard, and do sorts of things like that. You know, a lot of people were really into the capital grants and were just interested in doing those things. I was also interested about your slurry management things that you mentioned as well, because again, it was a lot of people were interested in sort of the covered slurry things. So where do you see sort of, you know, the capital grant side of things heading? Is it going to be more, you know, you have to be in one of these schemes to sort of benefit from it, rather than, because, you know, if you weren't in mid-tier, I think you could spend up to a certain amount, couldn't you? And then obviously it was then unlimited if you're in mid-tier. I'd just be interested sort of where you can see that heading.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think a lot of farmers don't ask that question, what's the least I can do to get paid? I've certainly visited some farmers who may have started from that position, but then they put in a hedgerow because they wanted it for a shelter belt or for some of the region, or just because it was free or whatever. And then they saw the wildlife arriving and saw the impact it was having, and actually become really enthusiastic about it and really want to do it. So some farmers are like that, and some are trying to get the kind of capital grants, and that's all they're interested in, and it's a diverse sector, and that's fair enough. We're not looking at putting conditions on any of the grants as things stand right now, but this is a 7-year program, and things could change during the course of that program, of course, in terms of how we want to achieve these objectives. And we will, throughout the whole program, be keeping all of these questions under review to see we have to, in my role and my colleagues, we have to be able to prove that what we're doing is getting value for money for the taxpayer, because it's people's taxes that we're spending on this. So we have to be able to show that what we're doing is really getting value for that money. But having said that, there are things on the productivity list which are not specifically to do with the environment. So it is a productivity scheme, but lots of the things that you do for productivity are also, as it happens, helpful for the environment, because if you're more efficient, you're probably using less inputs to produce the same amount of outputs, and that's also good for climate and the environment, isn't it? So that they're related, but we're not at the moment looking at putting conditions on either of those things.
Perfect, thank you. Everyone's being very shy by the looks of things.
Typical university lectures. Cameras are off and nobody says anything. But
so
I'm not a lecturer. I'm just a human like you are, and it's all right to just come and chat and ask questions.
I think it's a really good opportunity.
I mean, not that lecturers aren't human. Obviously, they are humans.
So whilst everyone's having a think, Joe, did you have another question?
Oh, Georgina's asked one in the chat as well.
Oh,
yeah, Georgina's just gone for one. Do you want to?
So I'll read it out just for those, for recording purposes as well, for anyone walking back. So Georgina's saying, hi, Janet. I've started working as a land agent in Lancashire, where there are many small farmers that are interested in doing more environmental schemes, but aren't comfortable with social media or using the internet, tend to be of the older generation. So how can these farmers get involved?
So there's no special kind of, you've got to be on social media to do this. Last winter, I'm looking around because I normally have a copy near me and I can't see it. We've sent a booklet to every house, every farm in the country, to tell them what was coming and how they could get involved. It was called Farming is Changing. I'm just having a look for it now to see if I can wave it at you. Hang on a sec. Oh no, I don't know what I've done with my copy. I've probably given it to somebody. Anyway, it was a little booklet and it was called Farming is Changing, and we sent it to everybody so that everybody would be able to have it even if they weren't online. And one of the things we're doing this summer is we're commissioning some organisations, giving them grants so that it can provide free advice to farmers to help them plan their way through the transition and help them understand what the options are. And those will be organisations that already know farmers and already know how to connect with them. And also when we do our kind of engagement work, we work through organisations like the NFU, the TFA, the CLA, and others that know farmers and know where they are and how to get in touch with them as well. So it's not just me on Twitter. That's not the only bit of communication that we do. Although that farming Twitter is quite active and there's quite a lot of people on there, it seems, engaged in quite vibrant debates. But not everybody's on there quite right. And it's really important that everybody is aware of what we're doing. So we will send more information like we did last winter. Once we've got more kind of substantial information, we'll send it out. And also if you claim BPS, the RPA know where you are and they send information to you. They'll send information to you about stuff. And also we also put that booklet into, I think it was either Farmers Weekly or Farmers Guardian, I can't remember which one, but I think it was Weekly, sent it to everybody. So the way we do it is we try and use lots of different channels. We go through other organisations that know farmers and we then try to saturate the market really with information so that one way or another, every farmer will get it. We like the booklets because we know that farmers often just leave them on the kitchen table.
Definitely. I think there was one of those on every kitchen table in the country, wasn't there, last year?
Yeah.
But no, it's good to hear, because I know people do want to get involved, but they don't actually know how to get involved or how to do parts of these schemes. So I think it's really important for that sort of education side of it. We've got another question it's coming in from Sophie here. Hi, Janet, could we please have a little bit more information on the slurry investment scheme and what is going to be included with this, and what percentage of grant money will be available? I know we're in the early stages of that, but do you have info?
Yeah, we are. So we haven't decided is the answer on that. What we're thinking about on the slurry. So what we don't want to do is invest a load of money now in slurry equipment and storage, etc., which then in 20 years is once again degraded and falling to pieces and needs investment again. So we need to do some kind of intervention that solves the root causes of the problem. And so the work we're doing at the moment is to try and understand what are those root causes. Why is it that farmers aren't investing in this? Is it because we're not doing the regulation and enforcement properly? And if we did, then people would be incentivized. Is it because they don't know what to do? In which case, maybe it's more about providing advice and guidance. And then what is it actually that we should support? Is it just covers, or actually should we be looking at more innovative types of technology where you can capture methane, for example? And so what we'll end up with, I expect, is some kind of package of better regulation, better advice, and a range of different things that we can invest in return for some kind of agreement that you actually use it. Because the other thing we don't want to do is pay someone for a shiny slurry store, which they then don't bother using and still just put the slurry into the local stream. So we haven't decided. We're doing some co-design work and some discovery work, which is where we talk to farmers and try and really understand what are the actual problems here, so we can design what we do to solve those problems. And then we'll publish information about what we're actually going to do in the slurry scheme. I think next year. I should have got that date up in front of me. I'll check while we're talking and then I'll tell you what the date was. Keep going. I'm Googling a particular document. In fact, I'll share the document with you and then you can find it yourself. Here you go.
That'd be really great. Thank you.
Here's a document. The document I'm showing now is the thing that went alongside the agriculture transition plan, which has got more details in it about dates and when things are going to get announced and when we expect to do stuff. We won't manage to hit all of these dates because it's a big complex program, but broadly speaking, we're on time despite COVID and everything else.
Yeah, that's great. We've got a question here coming from Maria, who is from the careers department. You mentioned further learning and advancement for a career in farming. Where could we find this information? And also, who would award this further learning that you mentioned?
So this is a new thing that's being set up now, the Institute for Agriculture and Horticulture. There isn't a huge amount of information about it online yet because it's new and it doesn't actually exist yet. So at the moment it's a policy idea, but lots of organizations and people who know farming really well are working together to set it up. But it has got a homepage. I'll share you, it's a holding website though. I'll share you the link to the homepage and you can have a look yourself and it tells you as much as there is to know about it right now. There you go. And who would award the learning is to be decided. So what they want to do is create a situation where if you want to apply for a job in agriculture, you can show, like you can in other professions, you can show that you've got a certain amount of training or a certain level of qualification that you've kept it up to date. And so the idea is that you'd have kind of accredited learning providers that you could go to and that they would, like you do in lots of other professions.
Yeah, it's interesting because you hear these things. It's in the news at the moment about animal welfare issues, and it comes from a lack of training within staff within the industry. And I think it's going to be so key going forward to keep those staff and to train those staff and look after them. So I think that's really quite exciting. We've got a question here from Luke. Hi, Janet. Can you tell us any more details on the young entrants programs post-Brexit? Or is this still
at the moment,
TBC?
It's TBC because, and it's not because we haven't kind of done anything on it. It's because we're co-designing it with farmers and others to work out what are the real problems here. But the sorts of things we're looking at are, I don't know if you'll have been familiar with county farms and council farms, but the idea is basically that they're available at, you start small on one of those at a lower rent than would be the market rate. And what used to happen when there were lots of county farms and council farms is that people could start on one of those, build up a bit of capital and experience, and then move to a larger one and a larger one, and then eventually get enough capital to be able to get themselves into the sector independently. But lots of them aren't there anymore and have been sold or whatever. And so that the opportunity to do that isn't there as in the same way as it used to be. So we're looking at, can we do something about that? Can we provide that kind of route in for people? Secondly, we're running an exit scheme, which is for farmers who want to leave the sector, because we know there are a lot of farmers who would like to be able to leave the sector but can't afford to. So what they'll be able to do is cash out their remaining basic payment entitlements. They'll be able to apply next year to cash out their remaining basic payment entitlements in one lump sum so they can afford to leave. And that should free up more land for new entrants to take on. So that's the other thing. And then the third thing is we're looking at what other types of support would be helpful. And we haven't decided which of these we would provide yet. So if you've got views, then let us know. But we're thinking about things like capital grants to help people get started. And also whether there's kind of hubs, new starter hubs, new entrance hubs, where people could meet each other and share information and experience and learning and tools and all that kind of stuff. And we're looking at whether that might be useful as well. So there's a range of things there. And we're due to share more information about that scheme, new entrant support scheme, later this year, November 2021, and then launch it in 2022. So follow the blog if you want to keep up to date on developments on that one.
I would recommend the blog. I subscribe to it.
I think that it sounds like a really exciting thing, and I'll definitely be adding to that blog, and I'll add into the bio of this when we upload it onto YouTube. I think that blog specifically, so it's readily available.
Yeah.
Somewhat, I've got quite a lengthy thing coming here through the Q&A. Feel free to ask these verbally, guys. So you mentioned that you'd like to deliver schemes by testing and trialing, then rolling out. How will this work with the Sustainable Farming Incentive Pilot, as the expression of interest deadline has not long passed? You are letting people know if they have been chosen to apply for the pilot by the end of May, with the agreement starting at the beginning of October. I understand the scheme will be open more fully next year, but how will you be able to review the progress of the pilot and its successes/downfalls and then make changes necessary to implement the full scheme. My point being, it seems there isn't enough time to review how the scheme could be improved from the pilot before rolling out the scheme fully.
Yeah, so I can totally see why you asked that question, and not the only person to ask it. And the reason that I imagine you're asking it is because what we used to do when we were making policy in the civil service, and what we often still do, is you run things sequentially. So first you spend some time thinking about the policy, and maybe you do a consultation. Then you run a pilot for like 3 years, and then you reflect on the pilot, and then eventually you do something in real life. Well, we don't want to do that, because that means you spend a lot of years piloting things and not actually doing good stuff for everybody else. And we don't need to. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to have the pilot, which will be like our research and development wing. And that's where we'll try things out with people who want to test stuff with us, make sure we're confident in them. And as we get confident in each thing, then we'll introduce it to the main service. So the main scheme next year will just be core elements of the scheme. There's a few elements of it to start with. And then gradually, as we test things in the pilot and we get confident in them, then we'll add them into the main scheme. So it's not test everything and then implement everything. Instead, it's implement something small, test other things over here, and add them in gradually as you go along. So that gradually between 2022 and 2024, we add in more and more stuff. There's never a kind of big moment where it can all suddenly go wrong, because we're just adding things in a bit at a time. And then by 2024, it's all there. And in general, in government, I've found, in my experience anyway, that's a much better way, much less risky way to deliver than doing test everything, deliver everything. Because when you do it that way, there's things you miss. And when you crank the handle, when you launch your great big thing, it will go wrong. And that's why we don't do that anymore, if we can avoid it. So it's not, so we will keep learning from the pilot throughout the whole period, and keep using that as a way to test things and add them in. Does that make sense to the person who asked the question?
Just on the pilot, out of interest, were they sort of younger farmers, or was it quite a range?
Don't know on their age, actually. We didn't ask them what their age was, because we didn't need to know particularly, but I guess we'll find out eventually.
Yeah, no, it'd just be interesting to see whether the younger ones are a bit more excited to try something a little bit different.
I think I reckon that's a myth, because I've certainly met farmers who are not really, really young, who are really progressive and innovative. Yeah. And I've met young farmers who are very, very traditional and don't want to hear about these new ways of operating, and also the other way around. So I think the idea that it's only young people that can be creative is not true. And some of the more sort of really fringe activities are done by people who've been around a bit longer, quite often, because they've got a bit more confidence to experiment. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm interested in what you all think, as you are, I presume, mostly young people.
Yeah. Joe, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's just interesting, really, because I mean, I've heard, I'm in various WhatsApp group chats as part of the NFU, and they all take the mick out of me, saying, "Oh, us old farts are getting kicked out now, and you're going to come and take over." And I'm like, no, that's not the sort of the point of it, is it really?
No, it's not. No, we haven't said anything about age in that consultation at all. We've just said if you want to leave the sector, you might be doing that. Retiring at the end of your career, you might just be doing it at some other point, mightn't you?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good way of putting it, really. I've got a question here from Sophie. What should farmers do for 2022 to prepare for the retirement package, or the leaving industry package, as we've just mentioned?
Well, I mean, this is a really serious decision for farmers to take. And I've certainly spoken to individual farmers who are thinking about making this decision. And what they've told me is they will be spending months working out their options, and if they're a tenant, talking to their landlord, or if they're an owner, thinking about what they would do with the land once they no longer farm it. It's a really difficult, complicated, and very emotional decision for somebody to do. It's your whole life, isn't it? Farming. So it's serious. So I would say, if there's anybody thinking about taking the exit package, there's no better time to start planning than right now, and thinking through the options and really making sure you understand them. We've got some free advice that will be provided from August onwards by a range of farming organisations. We got 30 of them bid to provide this advice, and we're just looking at all the bids now to see who should we actually give money to provide this advice. So even if you can't afford to pay for advice, you'll be able to get free advice to help think through what are your options. How might you be able to make the farm profitable? Do you want to do that? Do you want to leave? If so, what does that look like for you? It'll be difficult to make a decision yet, because we're only consulting at the moment, and we have to do that first and then look at what everybody said and then finalise the scheme details. So people won't really be able to make a decision until we've done that, and also until we've published more information about what you can get paid for through the environmental land management schemes, which we'll do from this summer. So the other thing is to follow our blog so that you can find out that information as it comes out and be able to be informed. But if you don't follow a blog, then we will send you the information some other way, through RPA or NFU or whatever other channel. So think it through. Take the free advice if you need it when it's offered. It'll be through proper, trusted, serious organisations, and look at the options really carefully as we kind of publish more information through the course of the year, I would say. Is that what Sophie, put in the chat if that's not quite what you were getting at, and if you wanted me to, if you were getting at something else, then I can happily address that instead.
Would there be advice with like things like TFA and stuff? Is that what you were alluding to, or like a different kind of body?
Well, so I don't know who's bid actually, but you might see bids from TFA, but you might see bids from existing sort of charitable organisations. There are some that provide advice to farmers, so I'd expect to see some bids from them. You might see them from kind of people who make a living from consulting with farmers who want to be able to provide that advice as a loss leader kind of thing. And so don't know yet. I'm not looking at the bids. My colleagues are, but I would expect to see a range of sort of networks, charitable type organisations and private organisations.
Yeah, that's fair. Someone a bit lengthy again. On improving infrastructure on farms, such as improving slurry storage, slurry application, or drainage and concreting, how does the government justify the capital investment into private companies is for the benefit of the public, other than possible environmental benefits, which could also be achieved through legislation being implemented? Personally, the rules have been too lax for too long, and the farmers will do the minimum if it has no impact on profit, like any other business.
Yeah, so you've hit the nail on the head of the kind of tricky policy question. Oh, there you go, it's been answered. You've hit the nail on the head of the tricky policy question there, because you've always got a choice. If you want to if you want to prevent damage in the countryside, you've got a range of options. One is you can legislate against it and enforce it so that it's no longer a viable business model to just ignore the rules, which it kind of is on slurry because the enforcement just isn't strong enough yet. But if you've got a situation where there's so much of the market that's not meeting the standards and you do that, there's a question that you have to answer, which is that really fair to move immediately from a situation that we've got now to one where suddenly overnight you're coming down really hard on lots of people because they can't rustle up the cash to suddenly do that investment. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we're not only talking about preventing damage here, we're talking about going beyond the regulatory minimum in order to be able to achieve better environmental outcomes. So looking at those options like methane capture, for example, and then supporting innovation in the sector and creating an environment in which people are incentivized and supported to protect the environment in the management of their slurry. So when you want to achieve positive outcomes like that, more incentives can be more appropriate. But it does come down to a political decision by the people, not me, I'm not a politician, but it does come down to whoever the government is to decide where do they want to be on that spectrum between let's just regulate the hell out of this and punish anyone who breaks the rules, and let's not bother doing any of that, let's just throw money at the problem, and somewhere in between. And where we're going to come down for this particular government wants to come down in the middle of that and say, right, we are going to regulate more, but first of all, we're going to give you the chance to catch up and get beyond the regulatory requirement because we want to see better environmental outcomes from the sector. And but you're right to raise the question, because it is a political judgment that politicians have to make. It's the sort of thing that people like me and my team advise them on the options, about what that range of options looks like and what we think the best value for money might be, or the best way to achieve the policy outcome they want to achieve, and then politicians decide what to do. So yeah, I could talk all night about the relationship between politicians and civil servants, but that's probably not your particular area of interest, is it?
It's quite interesting to see how it does all work, really. Just to sort of focus on a bit more detail. You mentioned at the start about flood mitigation, and we realise we've seen this year, in the past few years, how much of a problem it has been. What kind of schemes are you putting in place for farmland that is affected by flooding? Because it can devastate some farms, really. So what kind of sort of support are you looking into for that?
Yeah, so we're looking at, first of all, we're looking at, in this sustainable farming incentive, things that can be done on farms that prevent flooding either on that farm or also downstream from the farm. So if you store more organic matter in your soil, then it absorbs more water and holds more water, and that can prevent the water from just running off the land. And similarly, if you have cover crops and if you do all the things that you might do to prevent runoff from your land and it help the water be absorbed and held in the land, those are all really good things that we want to pay for through the sustainable farming incentive. There are also existing schemes, of course, that can help you to manage water better on your land. So there's making space for water schemes and others that are related, where you can create a kind of fence. I went to visit a farm where they'd fenced off an area that got flooded a lot, and instead of keeping on trying to graze on it, they've just stopped grazing on it and turned it into a wetland area. And that means that it soaks up and holds the water and prevents floods downstream, as well as being really good for nature on that farm. And the farm doesn't lose out in productivity terms because it's not productive land really, and it's really problematic for them anyway. So it's win-win for everybody, because the farmer gets paid to do that stuff, and he has more nature, or she has more nature on their farm, and all their neighbours have much less flood risk in the area. So that's the sort of stuff that we want to be able to support.
Great, thank you, Janet. Maria's asking, you mentioned earlier about £2.4 billion. I think that's spent on agriculture, isn't it? That's each year, isn't it, rather than over
it is
7?
It's every year.
And can you see that increasing, decreasing?
So for the life of this parliament, which is so this government will be in power until there's an election, and the next planned election is in 2024. And the government have committed that between now and then they will maintain that budget at the same level, £2.4 billion. So any money that comes out of direct payments will go back into the sector through one of the things I mentioned before, whether that's an environment scheme or a productivity scheme, mostly in environment schemes. Beyond that, that will be for whoever is the next government to decide. And so they will have in their manifestos, informed by all the stakeholders and people who tell them what should happen, and depending a bit on whether what we do is seen to be successful or not, they will decide whether they want to bid for more or less money. You can imagine any scenario, you can imagine either scenario, because you could imagine a government thinking, well, farming is 70% of the land in England, and if you want to store carbon and improve biodiversity and prevent flooding in towns and have a beautiful environment for people to enjoy, then it makes a lot of sense to invest in that environment in the way that we're doing. And so why don't we put more money in there? You can completely imagine that happening, particularly with the climate crisis happening. But you could equally imagine a government coming in and saying, well, actually, farming's had enough money, thank you, and we've decided to invest it all in something else instead, health or whatever. And obviously, I wouldn't speculate. I have no idea what the next government would want to do. It will be for everybody to vote for whoever.
Anyone can guess that one.
No, exactly. But for now, it's 2024, and I wouldn't, I'm not commenting either way on what the right thing is either, because I'm not a politician. But from now to 2024, the government have said that we'll keep the 2.4 billion a year in place.
Brilliant, thank you. Joe, are you going to
just sorry, no, just on that point, really. I know a lot of farmers are skeptical. Well, not a lot. A few farmers are skeptical of the income lost from moving farms to being biodiverse, and will not match that of the ALMS funding. And what kind of research has been done into that, and what's your kind of thoughts on that going forward?
Yeah, so that link I shared at the beginning in the chat to the evidence compendium sets out a lot of what we know on this. And what we did there was look at what are the things that affect farming profitability. And participating in schemes is one of them, but it's not the only one. And the thing about taking part in an environment scheme is that there's a cost to taking part, which isn't there for basic payments. So if you take money from basic payments and then put it back into the sector through a scheme, there are costs involved with complying with that scheme. So when we think about farmers making up their lost BPS income, we tend to think of a wider range of things. And we broadly think of 3 categories of thing that farmers can do. The first is increasing their income. And they can do that by participating in schemes like Sustainable Farming Incentive, and that we hope that will be really attractive to everybody. And we are reviewing the payment rates for schemes to make sure that that's the case. But there are other things you can do too. You can make your produce more marketable. So we know that, for example, 49% of prime beef doesn't meet target market conditions. And so perhaps there's opportunities there for those farmers to improve the marketability of their produce. And same in dairy, you can get different protein and fat levels, get different prices. You can diversify, you can adopt innovative practices. We know that the more profitable farms tend to be more innovative and tend to do more business planning and take their kind of profit and loss a bit more in a structured way and have a business plan. What we know, we also know that 20% of those in the bottom, half of those in the bottom 20% for profitability don't know that they're in the bottom 20%. So there's a real sort of difference there. If you do business planning and you collaborate with other farmers and you learn in that way, you're much more likely to be profitable. And we'll help farmers to increase their income through the productivity schemes, through the advice we're going to give, and through the agri-environment schemes. But then you can also reduce your costs by better nutrient management, by feed efficiency, by breed selection, and we can help with that through some of the productivity. And I didn't mention the animal health and welfare schemes that we're going to be running, where we're going to pay for results and pay for animal health and welfare plans. So we'll help with that there. And also you can reduce waste. We know there's a lot of waste from the sector in the form of pests and diseases, for example. So I got some good choice facts there. Who knows what proportion of rejected carcasses are rejected because of liver fluke, which is a preventable disease through vaccination? Anybody want to guess? What proportion do you reckon of carcasses are just rejected at the abattoir? 15%.
Very high.
Yeah, it's 15%. It's quite a lot, given it's preventable.
Yeah.
And then for crops, loss at harvest due to outgraded materials, spoilage in storage, etc., that can cause up to 20% of cereal to be lost. So these are things where if you use better methods and you're better informed, there might be opportunities to become more profitable and reduce your waste. And the things that the one really important thing to say here is, I'm not in any way suggesting, like, I know lots of farmers think a lot about this and lots of farmers are doing some of this, but we can see from the data that those who are the least profitable are the least likely to be doing these things to reduce their costs, reduce waste, and improve their profitability. So when we look at kind of making up lost income, we look at the entire package. We've got the environment schemes, but we've also got the productivity schemes and the business planning advice. And we really need farmers to take advantage of all of those different sources of help so that they can become profitable and do whatever it is that makes sense on their particular farm. Because also not all the things I've just listed are obviously appropriate on every single farm. You've got to pick the particular way to reduce waste and reduce costs and improve profit on your particular farm, given your particular approach and preferences and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't dream of telling anybody what to do on their farm, but those are the sorts of things that the data tell us are potential ways to make up your lost income.
Thank you. And I think I'm still quite amazed by that 15% thing of carcasses. That's crazy. Someone's asking, are you thinking to roll out schemes on more of a rolling basis rather than set deadlines?
We are looking at that, yeah. So at the moment, if you want to apply for a scheme, you have to do it in a particular window, and there's no window that makes sense for all farmers, because any time of the year is a peak for some kind of farmer or another. And so we are looking at that, because it would also potentially help us administratively, because instead of having a big peak where everybody applies to a deadline, we can do it through the year. So we're looking for the sustainable farming incentive. We're looking at this really closely to see, do we have a window, or is it just an ongoing thing where you can join at any time? And we haven't decided yet, but we're certainly looking we're certainly looking at that. And we're also looking to see if we do that for sustainable farming incentive, well, should we think about actually doing it for countryside stewardship as well, whilst it's still here? So can't make any promises on that yet, but we certainly are thinking about it, and we know that it would make a big difference to farmers if we could do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would work really well with countryside stewardship, actually. I think that could work really well. Joe, what were you doing?
Definitely. No, I just sort of to move on to, I've got a question from Alex here. Are there any plans to invest or encourage in some form of development of business which feed into farming? A lot of farms rely on agricultural engineers and what have you, and various different things. Especially on the slurry front, there's lots of innovation in that sector about just turning slurry into water.
Yeah.
Is there any investment? Is there any sort of plans for investment in those kind of companies?
Yes, so we're going to be offering grant support both for companies to do research and development of new practices and tools, but also for farmers so that they can adopt those practices and tools or do trials of them or do research on their farm or whatever. So there'll be much more information on that to come towards the end of this year and into next year on the range of different things we're doing to support that. But whoever asked the question, it's a really important issue. You're quite right to raise it, because we can see as well, like going back to the question I was answering earlier, those farms that are more profitable and more efficient and better for the environment do tend to be the ones that adopt those methods and those tools, and those that are least profitable don't. And part of that is because of capital, or not wanting to take the risk, or not having the information. And so we think there's a gap there that we can fill from government to just make it just a bit easier for people to adopt these things. We won't pay for it entirely, but just make it easier. Then it makes it just make a bit more business sense and a bit easier to take the risk.
Brilliant, thank you. An anonymous attendee is asking, hi Janet, you spoke about ensuring farm businesses remaining profitable following BPS. Can you shed some light on the actual monetary value per hectare that farmers might expect to receive for work they carry out as part of the SFI, for instance, so that they can improve the accuracy and reliability of their business plans going forward?
I can't yet, but I do know how important that information is. And we've promised we're going to publish some information about that in June for the Sustainable Farming Incentive from 2022. So what we're doing at the moment is looking at what the payment rates should be. And when we look at that, we try to balance broadly two considerations. One is, that's my husband bringing me a cup of tea, lovely man that he is.
That's good service, that.
It's really good, isn't it? He's a keeper, that one. It was a good idea. Don't marry anyone unless they bring you nice cups of tea. That's my hint for you. I've completely lost my train of thought. What was I saying? I was saying that, what was I talking about? I've forgotten.
About June.
Yes. We published the information in June about Sustainable Farming Incentive 22, and we're working out the prices now. And there's two considerations. One is making sure the scheme makes sense, financial sense for farmers, and is attractive and reasonable and fair. But then each time you increase the amount you pay, you reduce the number of farmers you can pay to do that thing if your budget is fixed. So you've got to balance making it accessible to as many people as possible with making sure that it makes sense for each of them individually. And that's quite a fine balance. And that's what we're working through at the moment to work out how should that look, and what's the right level of spending per SFI standard, because it's going to be structured around standards. What's the right level of spending given the output and outcome we expect to get for the environment for that spending as well, because we have to show that for each pound we spend, we get some decent return on that investment. So it's quite a complex set of considerations. We're working on it now, and we will publish some information in June about what the payment rates will be. So sign up to the blog. Did I mention we have a blog? And then you'll get the information there, or follow me on Twitter and I'll talk about it there when we've got more information to share on that.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
All of these different schemes, will they be coming out under RPA, or is it going to be Natural England? Is it going to be the Environment Agency? Who can you see sort of administering these?
At the moment, we're assuming that RPA will administer the schemes, as in they're the ones who'll handle your applications, but Natural England are really involved in designing what we should pay for and how much we should pay, and what's the most useful things we can pay for that get the best environmental outcome and really get to work on farms. And EA obviously have a big role in both that and also the regulation and enforcement, and we really work closely with them on that. And the way we work in our teams is that we work with virtual teams that include people from all those organizations. So we're one great big team that we work together, including NE, Forestry Commission as well, EA and RPA, so that we can get all of their different perspectives on this particular situation, and they all have a kind of role to play, really. We are thinking about how should we deliver beyond 2024, and it's possible, and there has been a previous recommendation that there's, for example, that there should be a single farming regulator. And we are still thinking about what does the long-term delivery picture look like. But for now, it will be the Rural Payments Agency, Natural England, etc., as it is now. And I'm not suggesting we'll definitely change that, by the way, just that it's one of the things we're thinking about as to how we can administer this in a way that really works for farmers and really is efficient, gets good value for public money, and achieves all the outcomes we're here to achieve. And we think we can do that through the existing bodies, and that's what we're going to do between now and 2024. But we'll see how it goes and what we learn.
Definitely. I mean, it's so important to keep it simple to get that uptake, isn't it, really, within farming especially. I'm aware we're coming to the end of the hour. Are you all right for just one more question?
Yeah, go on.
Is that all right?
Yeah, you're fine.
And I've got onto my NFU team. I'm an ambassador for the students. So just a quick question. Do you believe that adequate resources being given to the clean air strategy, considering the potential huge impact the industry has? And do you think it's being properly assessed? I mean, I know 88% of ammonia comes from sort of working with slurry. So I know it sort of impacts us massively. So
Yeah.
What's your views?
Well, part of what we're trying to do is increase investment in exactly that sort of thing. So the money that we're taking out of the subsidies will be, what clean air is one of the outcomes that we want to pay for. There are 6 outcomes that we're trying to achieve through the environmental land management schemes, and clean air is one of them. So we don't think there's enough investment yet. That's why we want to invest more through the environmental land management schemes to be able to achieve those outcomes. And we'll publish some more information later this year, which will show what is the scale of outcomes we're expecting to achieve through this money. So how much, what sort of improvement of clean air should we expect to see through the money that we're spending, 2.4 billion a year, and how much carbon should be either sequestered or reduced or taken out of the system. And we'll be publishing a summary of our business case later this year that will summarize all of that for everybody to see. And then you can all hold us to account for it, because that's the joy of being a public official.
Yeah, for sure. I think we are just at the end of our time. One thing which I wanted to, if we could just squeeze in really quickly, is just about, and I did think of it before this person sort of asked the question, about Welsh and Scottish governments and how you work with them, and how you can see things working with them. So
the way this works is that agriculture is a devolved matter. So there are some things which are the UK government sets the policy on them, and there are others which are devolved to the Scottish, Welsh and Northern Ireland assemblies. So managing the COVID crisis is one of the ones that's devolved, as you've probably seen. Agriculture is also devolved. So it's up to the Scottish, Welsh Assembly and Northern Ireland governments to decide what they want to do now that we've left the EU and how they want to handle their subsidies. The Welsh approach is not very different from ours. It's broadly aligned with the idea that they want to invest more in environmental outcomes in Wales. They're going about it in a slightly different way. We do, of course, talk to them about it, but we're not hugely involved because it's not right for my team. We're responsible for what we're doing in England, and it's not right for my team to get too involved in what's going on in Scotland or Northern Ireland or Wales, because it is devolved to them. There's another aspect to this, which is livestock traceability, where again, that is devolved, but if you don't have UK traceability, then your individual systems aren't going to be particularly effective. So we do want to work more closely with our colleagues in the devolved administrations on that, so that we can make sure, at least if we've got different systems, they can talk to each other, so that if a sheep crosses the border between Wales and England, as they do, we don't just lose track of it, because that's quite important. So that particular aspect of it really does require more to join up. And on the regulatory side as well, we need to make sure that what we're doing makes sense with each other and can interact with each other. But we have to respect the fact that the point of devolution is so that Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland can make their own decisions about these things. So I have to respect that.
Definitely. I mean, I'm from Chester, so I'm sort of right on the border, and I know a lot of farmers around us who sort of half the land's in Wales, half of it's in England. So it'd be interesting to see how that falls.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, we've come to the end of our hour. We've taken a bit more of your time. Thank you so much.
That's all right.
For coming to Harper Forum, the last one of this year. I think I'm sadly probably most people find quite sad how excited I am about all this.
It's not sad. All the best people are excited about what we're doing here.
But honestly, thank you so much for your time and enlightening the people who are here.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I really enjoyed the questions. And hit me up on the Twitters, as I believe they say.
Yeah, that's great. And for everyone watching, we'll upload this recording to our YouTube channel. It'll probably be on tomorrow, all being well. But no, thank you so much, Janet. It's been really informative. And thank you for your time.
Not at all. Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Janet. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.